Hello, and welcome to Website Construction and Management, an introduction to the inner workings of the web. To start, let's talk about why your team should create a website. A website is a great place to put communication resources for your team members and also other resources for both your team and other teams to access. The team website contains information about your team that helps people find you and learn more about what your team does. Finally, it is a great place to thank your sponsors for their contributions to your team. Now that you know some reasons why your team should have a website, let's discuss how to create one. When creating your website, you have some choices. You can use a content management system such as Wix, Weebly, WordPress, or Google Sites, which are often free but you may not like the URL you're given. They provide templates to get you started and use drag and drop code to allow you to personalize. To use drag and drop code, you don't need to know how to code, but it can be helpful to know. These websites tend to be responsive, but the downside here is that they can be pretty hard to customize. The other option is to create a website from scratch. For this, you'll need to know how to code with HTML and CSS. You may also need to know JavaScript, PHP, and Python. Creating your own website allows it to be highly customizable. Some tools to help you build are Microsoft Office and Adobe Dreamweaver. Once you create your website, you'll need to host it. You can use a web hosting service such as GoDaddy, AWS, or Google Cloud. They will create a server that makes your website files publicly available. They also make it easier to get the URL you want. Web hosting services can be used in tandem with a content management system, and they may even provide features such as email and additional security. The downside to it is that it usually costs money. Another option to host your website is to host your own server. For this, you'll need to know server management such as PHP and SQL. You will also need a dedicated computer that can install a web scan. Hosting your own server allows it to be extremely customizable, however it may run slower due to bandwidth constraints. Next, you'll need to choose a domain name. You can use either site listed on the screen to select your domain. You want to choose a name that refers to your website, such as your team name or number. You should also avoid long domain names. Two things to keep in mind when selecting your domain name is domain parking and typo squatting. Domain parking is when someone buys a domain name but doesn't assign it to a web server. People will do this to either keep a domain name for later or sell their domain name. Typo squatting is when someone gets a domain name that is very similar to a popular domain name and uses it to do things like steal information. Next, let's talk about how people are going to find you. To do this, we'll have to talk about web index. Search engines have AI called spiders that crawl the web looking for websites to add to their search results. If you're using a web hosting service, they'll simply let these search engines know about your website so you don't need to wait for spiders to find you. To help the search engines properly index your website, you want to use page titles and headers when creating your site. If you're using a content management system, they will handle this for you. One way you can help both users and spiders find your website easier is by listing it on your social media pages such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Now, we'll talk about putting the content on your website. To start, you want to create a plan of what information you will want on your website. It is good to have pages such as a home page with a general description of your team, an about page with a more detailed description, a meet the team page so people can know who your team is, a page for contact info, a page with information on how to join, and a page with some team photos. It helps to put content that doesn't need to be updated constantly. Once you have the basic information in, you want to start embedding things onto your page. Embedding is taking content from another site and putting it onto your site. Google has many products you can do this with, such as your team's Google Calendar with your meeting time and events, a Google Map with directions to your meeting place, and team YouTube videos. You may also want to embed your team's social media pages. This is a great way to get constant updates to your site. Some tips when you're designing your site. Always start with a plan of what you want your website to look like. Be aware of how your site flows and what readers are going to look at. White spaces are always good on the eye. You'll want to make sure your website has a responsive design and is mobile friendly for people using from home. Finally, you'll want to make sure your website follows ADA compliance guidelines. This is required for government entities like schools. To be ADA compliant, you'll need to make sure your text colors contrast in the background, you avoid animations, blinking, flashes, etc. All your images have alternative text stating what the picture is, and your videos have captions. You can check your website with the link on the screen. Thank you for attending this workshop. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at coleblogic3617@gmail.com.